Hello everyone, this is Makeda Voletta, also known as the Body Scientist. I am a strength and conditioning coach and nutritionist, and I'm here today to speak about pre-fertility diets. And I know I'm probably getting a lot of hate mail for this and criticism, but all the recommendations I give and the opinions that I form on nutrition is based off of years of research, of researching from a variety of different perspectives before I come up with conclusions. So before I give any recommendations to anyone for nutrition, I look at the question, okay, from an epidemiological standpoint. So that means looking at who are the healthiest, longest living people currently on the planet, or certain disease trends. Epidemiological research, I look at anthropological and archaeological research. Actually, a lot of my nutrition research is founded in anthropological and archaeological research because that just shows what has stood the test of time. I also use biological and nutritional research, a variety of things. But what is my biggest inspiration when it comes to nutrition in general, and especially as it pertains to pre-fertility nutrition? So nutrition for conception, during pregnancy, and post-pregnancy. A lot of that comes from studying indigenous people. Okay, a lot of people will say, oh, well, that was a long time ago and our bodies changed. Well, it wasn't really that long ago, because depending on where you're talking about on the planet, indigenous pre-colonial people could have been 100 years ago, 200 years ago. That really and there are some people like that now, not very many. Most people have been colonized, but there are some places in the Polynesian islands, some parts like deep in the Amazon, where you find some people who are still like really living the way they did in pre-colonial times. However, when we are told that humans now live longer than we ever did before, and that we're like living longer and stuff like that, that's totally not true. Anthropological and archaeological research has shown that humans on every continent lived to be an average of 120 years old when they were eating their traditional foods. And Weston A. Price, who he was an American dentist who I believe in the 1930s went around the world to every continent. He studied remote people, and he took photos of what their facial structure and their teeth and everything looked like when they were consuming their traditional foods prior to colonization. And then he also images of children, the first generation after people started eating what he called the white man's foods. And he was a white American dentist, but what he defined as white man's foods were canned vegetables, flour, sugar, processed foods. And he took note of the severe damage because a lot of things that we think now is being normal, like bad eyesight, or having arthritis, or just a lot of people being short, having bone problems. It's so common, people think it's normal, but it's not normal, because pre-colonial people were not like that. They were built. When the Spaniards landed in Florida, they wrote about the Native Americans they found and how they were so well built. They were astonished at how well built they were, and how they talked about how they saw men who were 90 years old who were only slightly weaker than men who were 18. Okay, they talked about how they saw women swimming across the river with 3 babies in their back and climbing up the mountain. And that's the reason why they thought they had stumbled upon the Fountain of Youth, which happens to be in my dad's hometown in St. Augustine, Florida. They thought that they had discovered the Fountain of Youth because the people were so strong, and they talked about how the men who were 90 years old, they had no deformities, no arthritis, no missing teeth, no problems. They were only slightly weaker than the men who were 18. So they were about the amazing bodies and physiques and superb health of the Native Americans. Same thing with Africans, same thing, they found same thing, beautiful physical specimens. So what do these people eat? Our recent ancestors eat. It doesn't matter if you're from Europe, from Asia, from Africa, from the Americas. I don't just study one group of people, I study everybody, okay? Because we're all a mixed group. My clients come from all over the world, and people travel all over the world, so it's good to know and look around the world and cross-compare. And so this idea of veganism, has been something I've been researching heavy probably since 2002. I spent years keeping my mouth shut, doing the research, because I knew some very smart people who are vegans, and even though it didn't really make sense to me, I was like, okay, maybe they have some valid points, maybe they know something I don't. So I spent years researching every argument from every perspective, okay? And I'll do a video about that end of the day, breaking that down, because I studied that question from a spiritual perspective, from a nutritional perspective, from a biological perspective, from an epidemiological perspective, from an archaeological and anthropological perspective, and from a historical perspective. And nowhere in there did I see any evidence that we should not eat any animal foods at all. Actually, I think that's a sheer exaggeration, because nowhere in the planet, amongst any traditional people, will you ever find a group of people who just ate plants. Everybody ate animal and plant foods. Just like everybody has drums, they have animal skin and plants. It was, we were omnivores. We consume animal foods, plant foods, and microorganisms, okay? So when it comes to, I think that it's one thing when a grown adult decides to become a vegan. I don't recommend it then either, but, at least they're grown and developed. However, when it comes to women of childbearing age, even men of childbearing age, but especially the women, because women have to nourish the baby and grow the baby and breastfeed if they're doing that, and it just takes a lot more out of her, then the nutrition for her is even more important. So I definitely don't recommend that for a woman of childbearing age, a pregnant woman, a woman who's breastfeeding, and I don't recommend it for babies and children. Now, there are a lot of people who, will say, well, my child's a vegan and they're fine. Everything, is a case-by-case situation. So I guess, you could also find people who eat McDonald's every day and ate McDonald's when they were pregnant who could say the same thing. They could say, well, I eat fast food, I didn't eat all this healthy organic stuff, and my children came out fine. Well, fine, I don't know how you define that. Fine to some people can mean that their child's alive, but the child has allergies, the child may have bad eyesight, the child may have dental problems. It could be a variety of things, and somebody says my child is fine. I don't know. There has to be a way to measure that. But what I do know is that of doing this work for the past 10 years, I have had women come to me. I've had a few women who are clients of mine who were in their 40s who told me they wanted to have children. They never had children. Whenever I've known a woman who told me that she couldn't get pregnant, she couldn't have children, I always ask her diet, because I'm also studying. As a practitioner, I'm also researching. As I educate and study, it's a constant thing that works together. So every time I've asked that question, women have also always told me they were vegans, vegetarians. And so the women I knew who in their 40s who wanted babies and never had them told me they had been vegetarian since it wasn't even popular, so they grew up like that. And what I do know from studying nutrition is that there are certain nutrients that are not in plant foods, okay, like vitamin A. Vitamin A, the real chemical form of vitamin A is called retinol, okay? That sounds like retina, okay? So it's stored in our eyes, in our eyeballs. It's also stored in egg yolks, especially pasture eggs from chickens who were grazing and eating worms and stuff like that. The yolk is very orange. There's retinol, also in liver, very good source of vitamin A. Vitamin A is indispensable. It's a fat-soluble vitamin, so you need fat as well, especially saturated fat, to absorb the fat-soluble vitamins. Beta-carotene, people will say, well, you can get vitamin A from carrots and mangoes. Well, no, you can get beta-carotene. Beta-carotene is not vitamin A. Beta-carotene is a precursor of vitamin A, and our body has to expend a lot of energy to convert that into true vitamin A, and a lot of times that process is flawed, especially if somebody has a metabolic issue, okay? Now, in the time of pregnancy, and you're growing a baby that's rapidly developing, and woman has such a high requirement for food, for nutrients. And oftentimes women are not super hungry when they're pregnant. And there's nausea, there's vomiting. That doesn't happen to every woman, but these are things that happen, or someone will lose their appetite in the beginning and the end. So eating nutrient-dense foods is really important, and the most nutrient-dense foods are animal foods, especially when it comes to iron. The best source of iron is heme iron, heme iron is iron that's from animal foods. Then there's non-heme iron that's in plant foods. But heme iron is much more absorbable than non-heme iron, okay? And the best sources of that are dark meat, liver, egg yolks, brewer's yeast if you must, but animal iron is much more absorbable, okay? And that's an issue. There's, women we're always on the brink of anemia. If we're not anemic, we're on the brink of it because we have our menstrual cycles. So during pregnancy, it's really important because iron helps to bind oxygen, and we have an increased need of oxygen for it to nourish the baby. Then we have vitamin A, which is necessary for the development of the eyes and neural developments as well. And it's important men and women, because men who are on vegan diets who are not consuming vitamin A, that can cause issues with the sperm. It can cause defects. Vitamin A and D deficiencies can cause defects. And vitamin D, we need cholesterol in order to even make vitamin D from the sun. So in order to convert vitamin D from the sun, we need cholesterol. Vitamin D is actually more like a hormone than it is a vitamin, okay? So vitamin D deficiencies can also cause severe problems, fertility issues in men and women, all right? And there is no plant source of vitamin D. There's only animal sources like olive oil, okay, or raw milk. Raw milk is also a good source of vitamin A, I forgot to mention that. Raw grass-fed milk. But vitamin D is not found in any plant foods. And again, even if you're getting it just from the sun, you still need cholesterol in order to do that. Okay, and cholesterol is only in animal foods. Our hormones in our brain is made from cholesterol and saturated fat. So with babies and children who are rapidly developing, they have a much higher requirement for fat and also in protein than adults. Babies, have about over twice the amount of protein per gram of body weight as adults do. And they have much smaller stomachs. So filling them with vegetables, which are, plant foods, which are high in fiber, and the protein and fat, and the protein and fat that's in it a lot of times is not the highest quality. Okay, so that means that they have to eat a lot more of those foods in order to try to assimilate. But that's not, for a kid, they be eating all day like just bushes and bushes of food. When looking at traditional societies, some people, like I was saying, some people will mention that, that was so long ago, but it really wasn't. And when you look at populations of people, like when I test, there's theories and there's facts. There's people who have nutrition theories, okay, and then there's what has been proven to work over time. And so for me, I don't gamble with my body, and I don't gamble with other people's bodies, okay? So I do what has proven to work over time. And what I do know is I have not seen any societies where they have produced, someone has been a vegan from the womb, they grew up strong, lived to 100 or more, and in their lifetime they also produced children who also grew up healthy and strong on a vegan diet. I don't see that, anywhere. So even if you ask anybody right now who's 90 years old what their mother ate, when she was pregnant with them, I bet you none of them will tell you that their mother was on a vegan diet, okay? You won't find any vegans who were vegans in the womb who made it to 100. Okay, so I, personally would not experiment with that. And I trust the wisdom of indigenous people who truly live with the land, who did not have the luxury of going to the supermarket to buy acai berries when they live in New York, and avocados and coconut water when they live in Chicago, which are not local foods, okay? Not only that, but they, produce healthy children, healthy babies, one generation after the next. And so some of the foods that are really important, fish, even people who lived more inland would go through a lot to get fish, all right, from people who were closer to the seas. Or they would do different things to get dried fish and stuff like that. And it's funny because fish is often associated with pregnancy. People dreaming of fish and that association. But fish really feeds the brain. The Japanese consider eggs to be a brain food and fish as well, okay? So eggs are a really highly nutritious food, especially, for women, for pre-fertility diet and during pregnancy. In traditional societies, when women wanted to become pregnant, they would consume the ovaries and eggs of certain animals. And men would consume the testicles of certain animals. Like in Jamaica, there's cowboy soup. Because, that would help. It's like heals like, okay? So consuming organs, like if somebody has something wrong with their liver, they would eat liver. Or something is wrong with their heart, they would eat the heart of another animal. So eggs and ovaries of other animals actually nourishes a woman's reproductive system. And the same thing with men consuming the testicles of certain animals, okay? But regardless of that, even if not that, but just always high in animal foods. Whenever, if you go to any little village someplace, with Indigenous people or people pre-colonial people, what the pregnant woman ate was always very nutrient-dense animal foods. You're not going to find any civilization where they consume just plant foods. Now, in my practice, I've noticed, I mentioned the women who wanted to have children in their 40s who are vegetarians, but like, I also have known women who were on vegetarian diets during their pregnancy and had sons who, got to be a certain age. They're 4 years old, they're 5 years old, they're and they're not really saying much. They have speech issues. And boys a lot of times suffer more when it comes to like prematurity or any kind of health issues. Boys tend to be a little bit more delicate. So I've seen this, a lot of times vegetarian and vegan children don't grow to be as tall, they're shorter, they don't have enough protein. A lot of times their immune systems are they're suboptimal. Their bones don't always develop right because, again, vitamin D and vitamin A only in animal foods. We need vitamin D for your bone health and your hormones. You need saturated fat to absorb vitamin A and vitamin D. So even if you want to get beta carotene and try to pray to God that you convert it to vitamin A, you still need saturated fats. So if you put like butter on your yams, or you put butter on your carrots, that would help. That saturated fat will help you absorb the beta carotene. Okay, or coconut oil. Coconut oil is also a saturated fat. Extra virgin cold pressed. So, this issue that I would observe now, I'm always observing with clients and stuff like that. And so for me, given what I have seen, and just knowing what has worked and what has produced perfectly healthy children, generation after generation, I would not recommend a vegan diet. Because even when people tell me now that they have had children, they were on a vegan diet during their pregnancy and the children are fine, well, only time will tell. We can only know that when their children grow up, and we see if they're able to reproduce, and when they reproduce, the health of their children. Okay, because we haven't seen that yet. And what we do know is that the fats. It's very important, especially for women, to have enough fats in the diet prior to conception. So we have the fats, we have the iron, we have the cholesterol, vitamin A, vitamin D, then vitamin B12, which is also only found in animal foods, and 9 of B12 can also cause an iron deficiency. Can also cause anemia. So anemia can be caused from vitamin B12 deficiency or iron deficiency, both of which are in animal foods, both of which are in the same foods a lot of times. Okay, and raw dairy is a great source of calcium because raw dairy, and not homogenized commercial dairy, but raw dairy, because the lactic acid in it helps the body to accumulate the calcium, so does the vitamin D, and the fats in it all are necessary to absorb that calcium. Okay, so they all work together. And also, another good source of calcium is bone stocks. So all over the world, all over Africa and Europe and the Polynesian islands, the Mediterranean, they use fish stocks, beef stocks, chicken stocks, which is made by boiling the carcass, the bones of those animals. And the United States, we used to use that a lot too, but we don't anymore. Instead now, when people make soups, or you look at a can of soup, or a lot of times it's made from hydrolyzed protein, which is MSG, which is really toxic, instead of stocks. Now the stocks that are made from these bone stocks and these broths, they have lots of calcium as well, and they also have glycine, which is a really important amino acid, especially for babies who are growing and developing. They also have, and so does the skin. So does the skin of certain animals. So if you're eating chicken and you eat the skin, it also has glycine, which is necessary for the proper building of a baby. But also aminoglycans. Aminoglycans are something that helps to regenerate and build cartilage. So as people age and they start having cartilage issues, which is another thing I've seen a lot in vegans that I know, grown people I know who are